We want to spend time with our families. We want to spend time, in worship with God. We want to be able to, invest in our communities.
In the secular entrepreneur world, it's all about, crushing and grinding and creating the perfect email sequence and funnel and writing the perfect copy that manipulates the person into taking action.
Like, we want to love everyone the same. That's what we're called to do. So if anything, it gives us an opportunity to lead and show them what being around other Christians can be like.
I work my day job, and then nights and weekends I'll, do video content, and I'll, do photography, and I'll do graphic design, and I'll do all those other things as a side hustle so that my wife can stay home with our kids, Are you ready to feel like it's Friday every day? I'm Mark Labriola II, and this is The Friday Habit. We interview experts to learn how to bring excitement, possibility, and sweet, sweet relief into every single day, no matter what day it is. If you're a small business owner, entrepreneur, or agency leader, get ready to grow your business, lead with purpose, and build a life you love. Welcome to The Friday Habit. But hey, I'm excited because we have somebody on the show today who really just gets into the weeds of owning and growing a business. And then the thing that provides value to most clients is leads. And leads come through digital advertising and SEO. And this guy is an expert on it. And so I'm joined by Ozzy Garner, and he's the founder of Advertis, a performance-based marketing agency that helps businesses scale using paid traffic and conversion optimized funnels. Ozzy's not just another media buyer, though. He's built Advertis to be a growth engine for lean teams who need real results. No fluff around here. Okay, so from scaling seven-figure e-commerce brands to helping local businesses break through revenue ceilings, Ozzy brings a data-driven, no BS approach to growth. So welcome to The Friday Habit.
Thanks, Mark. Thanks for the kind intro. I'm excited to be here and really excited to dive in with you here, and hopefully provide some more value to your audience. Really excited.
Yeah, I'm stoked to have you here. So we met, I want to say over a year ago now.
Definitely, yeah.
I feel like, it's just a gift that keeps on giving.
Well, I'm a little time blind because when you're having fun, you don't really know how much time has gone by.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, oh, here we are again, But yeah, so when I first met you, we're a creative content agency, and slowly I've been thinking about like, okay, how do we provide more value to clients? How do we provide results for clients? Because a lot of times, we do the thing that they need as far as creating podcasts and video content, and then we give that to them to like, all right, here's your thing that you need. And then they'd kind of be lost of like, okay, well, now what do I do with this? Or how do I turn this into something that generates more business for me other than just posting it on social? And so then I started doing some research. I'm like, all right, I need to figure out, like, I can't really afford to like bring in a full-time digital SEO person in-house. And I've had some bad luck with, other freelancers in the space where it's like ridiculously expensive. And then, it takes so long to get traction with some of the digital advertising SEO that it's like, it becomes one of those things where I couldn't afford to kind of maintain, that freelancer to continue to do that work.
Yep.
And so then I came across you guys, and it was like, all right, wow, this is kind of exactly what I'm looking for as far as, kind of having a partner on board that can help me on sales calls and understands the ins and outs of digital advertising and SEO and kind of can talk the language and then can execute on all the work when the time comes. So then we hopped on a call and you kind of shared the vision of what you guys do, and now we've been kind of working with you over the past year or so. And so I was just thinking too, I think the last time we chatted, I was like, man, you would be a really great guest to have on the show because a lot of our listeners are maybe they have a digital advertising agency or a creative agency, and they just need some inspiration of like, how did you go from working your day job, crossing over into starting your own thing, and then kind of growing that with a team and all those other kind of things. So with all that being said, I'm so stoked to have you. And then again, we haven't really had an in-depth conversation about your journey and anything like that. And so I'm excited to kind of get to know you a little bit more and hear a little bit more of your story. And so with that, were you always involved with digital advertising and SEO and whatnot? And were you doing that for another company at some point? Or were you flipping burgers, at Wendy's and saying like, you know what, I'm going to start a side hustle?
Funny story. Actually, I did work at White Castle when I was younger.
Okay, steaming those burgers.
That's
steaming
right.
them.
Steaming them, and I was the guy. I wasn't the cool guy that got to actually work behind the griddle. I was the guy that had to clean the bathrooms. So,
oh man,
hey, I've earned my keep.
Somebody's
right?
somebody's got to be that guy, right?
That's right. At White Castle of all restaurants.
Yeah.
But no, I mean, I'm excited to be here as well, and obviously to share my story. I actually was not in marketing at all. Matter of fact, I actually have always been a business guy. So when I came to business, I was the kind of a nerd listening. I was always in the car listening to podcasts like Tim Ferriss and, obviously Joe Rogan podcasts and stuff, and hearing some really intelligent people just talk about, how they've bettered themselves, and probably very similar to your podcast in the sense of how you're helping other people lift other people up and how they've shared their stories, et cetera. And, back when I was getting into my career, I wanted to get into a sales role because I had always been more of like an extrovert, personally, but also still like, I love, if you can see behind me, if you're watching this, I have bicycles in the background on the walls. I've got backpacking gear, which you can barely see because the lighting's not great in there right now. But I love the outdoors. So I'm also an introvert. So there was this side of me that was like, I never really got to explore yet. So when I got into my career more, I wanted to get into sales. Within 6 months of being in a sales role, like I doubled the annual revenue of a company I was working at, and they had been around for 20 something years.
Oh, wow.
I signed one big MSA, master service agreement, and it was like history after that. It like confirmed in me. I was like, oh, actually, I'm pretty good at this.
Nice. Yeah, that's awesome.
But all that to say, like when I got into sales, I realized that sales wasn't just sales. Like there was account management, there was finance, there was like operations side of it where you had to make sure the client was taken care of, and you worked with the ops team and yada, yada, yada. So
marketing,
advertising, definitely probably the biggest part of it. And so you like seeing how everything kind of correlated together, and it just kind of inspired me to look into entrepreneurship. And I do believe there's a difference between a business owner and an entrepreneur.
Yes.
And so I wanted to be an entrepreneur. Again, following Tim Ferriss.
When you say that, what do you see as, because the way, and I think I just talked about this with someone recently. I feel like a small business owner, right, is somebody who owns a business and they manage people and they grow the business and they're inside of this one thing. And then an entrepreneur, I feel like, is somebody who is a visionary, who has lots of ideas, and they essentially will execute on those ideas, grow something up, and then sell it, move on, and go to the next thing and do that. Or they're spinning multiple different types of businesses or ideas at the same time. That's what I think is the difference between an entrepreneur and a business owner. I
mean, you nailed it right on the head precisely. I think.
Okay, well, there you have it.
Well, I would share that, being an entrepreneur isn't always glamorous. Like everybody, when I was first getting started, when the second I changed my profile on Facebook or LinkedIn that I was an entrepreneur, I probably had hundreds of friend requests and connection requests overnight. It was insane. And I realized that a lot of these people were like in the same category as me, trying to become something out of nothing and trying to understand how to go to market and things like that. So the word entrepreneur was thrown around pretty loosely. I was like,
oh yeah. So many people say they're entrepreneurs, and I think I even fall into this. I say I'm an entrepreneur because in one aspect I am, in the sense of like, I left my job and I started something.
Yeah.
But I've never left that thing that I started. I just keep iterating within it, to try to grow it and come up with ideas within this one business to, generate more income.
And honestly, that's a beautiful thing. Like I actually I'm envious of business owners because you have focus. And I think with entrepreneurs, one of the guilty pleasures, if you would, that an entrepreneur, or that I've seen that most entrepreneurs have, is this like the monkey mind, where you're constantly thinking of the next thing and you're not appreciating the thing that's in front of you, right? Like,
yeah.
And, that's part of what my role is in Advertis, is I'm always thinking about the next 6 months to a year, down the road. And that's, as the CEO of the company, I'm creating the vision. But, going back to where it started essentially was just like being that I was so curious about entrepreneurship. I wanted to get more involved. I was following people like the Tim Ferriss and the Dan Martells. And I was like, how do I become that? I grew up in poverty. We didn't have much growing up. So to me, it was like, how do I make something of myself for my family and my children? I have 3 little boys and a wife, and I want to do something big for them, So I wanted to create generational wealth and something that could be passed down, but also serve in my church and my community and, really lift other people up. So I got into when I started getting into sales and being successful, I started making what I call big boy money, right?
Okay. Yeah.
And I didn't know what to do with it. So I started learning how to invest, lost a lot of money, earned some money, learned the hard way. Then I got into, I was an angel. I was registered in the state of Kentucky. That's where I actually live, as an angel investor. So I started investing, doing some angel investments, and started, consulting a little bit, getting into business, consulting and sales and marketing started naturally happening. And, by the time I was into this angel investment, I started getting consulting for equity, and it just kind of opened more doors up for me. I ended up building a network outside of my, I was working in life safety in that moment, like in my full-time gig, but I was helping startups and SaaS companies and helping service-based companies like marketing agencies and things like that. So it just ended up naturally finding out that I was just a natural at business. Like I liked business, right? So basically, if it's okay, I can share some of the founding story of Advertis.
I would love that. I mean, I think that would be really helpful, because already I'm kind of seeing this vision of, all right, you have this day job and you start making some, good money, especially in sales, right? When you're getting commissions and things like that. And if you're good at what you do, you're getting those fat checks. Then you're a community minded person. So you're starting to think about, all right, how do I, take some of this and move past my day job or whatever, and start taking my resources to invest in some assets, that could turn into something that generates more income. And so I think that's very inspiring, because I think there's a lot of people out there like that. I have a few friends who even, they have businesses of like a painting company or something like that, but then they're also investing in the stock market, and they're like, doing some stuff there where they're like, oh, wow, like I'm starting to make some income over here doing this. Like maybe I should get into some day trading and doing some other stuff like that. And so I think a lot of people get into that. And I think same thing with the side hustle. For me, it's like I wanted my wife to stay home with our kids, and so I said, okay, I work my day job, and then nights and weekends I'll do video content, and I'll do photography, and I'll do graphic design, and I'll do all those other things as a side hustle so that my wife can stay home with our kids.
Exactly. Well, and that's the thing. It's like when you start to build your network outside of those things, trying to serve your community and your family and things like that, it's like all these doors God provides, and He like opens these doors up, and so like when I was actually exiting a startup, it was pretty cool, actually. It was incubated out of Station F in Paris, France. And Zendesk was the one that was funding the first round, the seed round.
Sweet.
Pretty neat, right? I was the fractional CEO of that company. And so we were, at the end of that, my contract was up. I just took, my shares out and cashed them out onto the next thing. And Zach, the other founder of Advertis, him and I were working together in that project. He was our director of marketing I brought on. And what I'd found was, a lot of marketing agencies at that moment was suffering a lot from the Great Resignation. A lot of their talent were going to work on Fiverr and Upwork, and they still had these client portfolios that were like, we still got to serve these people, but I don't really want to hire contractors like freelancers. This is pretty serious, contracts.
Yeah.
So Zach and I looked into that, and Zach has been in the marketing, and he's been building Google ad accounts since I think he was coming out of the womb. It cracks me up.
Clicking.
But I talked to him about it, and he talked to me and presented me an idea of white label. I didn't even know what white label was in the moment. And we started off traditionally as a white label agency, just coming into these agencies and helping them, manage their workload. And so as it progressed over the years, we found there was a very common problem with, at least marketing agencies. And a lot of them they struggle when it comes to actually running a business, like the actual function of it. They're very good in the day to day, but they're not really intentionally trying to build the business to be a business owner, essentially. So we found that to be a common problem. So we decided we wanted to create a system and a process and a program to help these agencies become business owners, the owners of them, to actually work on a business instead of in the business, right?
Yeah.
So naturally what happened was we created a team to put into their agency and then allowed them to scale without having the ability, like having to go hire.
Yeah, the overhead cost, yeah.
Yeah, like all that risk that you take on as a business owner. And then also, we help them in the sales and, things like that. And, it's common, I think, Mark, you and I even talked about this, it's common to like kind of hold yourself back in a sense. It's like as you're growing your agency, you don't always know because you're so in it. Sometimes it's nice to have an outside perspective to like someone to look outside with you for a second. So a lot of what we do now is we partner with the agency and we look at their overall agency and we say, maybe you can offer services here and here's some other services we can help you provide. And we're not only going to come in and help you do the work, but we're going to help you sell it, educate your clients, retain it. Like it's like a full on done for you essentially model. Now, which we got to talk about this, we're actually starting to generate leads for our partners. So that's a new thing we're starting to
I think we
offer.
chatted about that, and it makes sense, right? Because the more they can grow, the better it is for you guys. It's like you're helping them grow so that you can grow as well.
It's a win-win-win situation.
That's right. The triple win. The triple win.
But all that to say, like when we started Advertis, we didn't really know. It was just kind of the first time where we were like, let's just start our very own business where no one else is going to kind of dictate how this thing is going to go. So we started Advertis and it blew up. Within 18 months, we become a 7-figure agency. And it's just, we've had consistent growth year over year since then. It's been such a blessing. But leading into it, we ended up acquiring a company called White Label Tools through this journey. Zach and I actually started our own private equity firm called 1614, where we actually help marketing agency owners, but we also help SaaS companies enter into a reseller market. So it's been a really cool journey. And then obviously with the innovation and progression of AI, it's been a really big deal because a lot of companies are starting to work with us to help us implement AI into their company to help them scale up some things and automate things so they can be the business owner, right?
Yeah.
So we've had a lot of, that's when I say the entrepreneurial side of me, it's like, that's what I mean. It's like we're building other businesses on top of this. And it's been honestly, in the last 5 years now, it's been such a really unique journey being in the marketing agency side of things. It's really introduced me to other aspects of business that I'd never seen before.
So what was that journey as far as like, okay, so you guys started Advertis, right? And then you're doing the work, I'm assuming, like in the beginning, because, it's like, all right, we have this skill. We know how to do this because I think once you become, an expert in something, right, at some point you're like, all right, this is easy for me now. And that's, I think, one of the things I always have to remember is that, like, sometimes what I feel or think is easy and like, why would I charge for this? Or like, why would someone pay for this? It's like you have to realize that the knowledge and skill and the life, history that you have that makes something easy or unique to you makes it, or in some cases is hard for somebody else, I mean, even like one of the things that we do is we do consulting on, your podcast as far as your setup, your home setup, right? And so, in my mind, I'm thinking like, doesn't everybody know it's like, get a light, put some stuff in the background, like it's easy, right? And then it's like, but it's funny because people are clueless or they feel overwhelmed and they feel like at a loss when it comes to some of this stuff. And so a lot of times it's just changing your mindset to being like, yeah, hey, the things and knowledge that you have is unique and special. And if you package it in the right way, you can sell it.
That's so true. I mean, perspective is usually the hardest part for any founder or any business owner is getting out of your own way, essentially. And you'll hear this about probably 30 times today in your algorithms after listening to this podcast, but it's so true. I mean, it's such a cliche thing to say, but it's so true in the way that, even as a new founder in Advertis, when we first started, like I didn't know anything about, like I knew that marketing, I knew how to build campaigns. I knew why they existed on each platform. Like I knew the basics, but I didn't actually know how to structurally build out a PMAX campaign and like why programmatic mattered behind all this stuff and why, omni-channel presence matters in marketing. Like I didn't know this stuff until I got deeper into the industry and like what it meant. And the reason it's like, you have to have the ability to look back and also be able to see how everything's structured. You actually don't as a business owner. You don't have to know how everything works. You don't. And I think that oftentimes, going back to your perspective thing, getting in our own way, sometimes it's just a matter of getting to the problem and finding the solution. And I think you hear about Steve Jobs and how he was very good at focusing on a problem. And he wouldn't really go anywhere else until that problem was fixed. I feel like that's a common issue with a lot of founders and a lot of owners. And so all that to say, like to your point, getting out of your own way, that perspective change matters a ton, because like when we first started Advertis, I didn't know anything about doing that stuff, like I said. And what I did know was sales. So I built a cold I had no budget. So we needed a budget for ops. I was funding it out of my own pocket. Zach was funding out of his own pocket. And we were like, let's find somebody to do project management while I'll go to market. I'll build a cold acquisition funnel. Like I'll use LinkedIn, like we'll do the whole thing. I'll build it out of my own pocket. And so I did, and, scaled it up. We ended up closing our first 50K in MRR in the first it was within the first 4 months.
Wow.
And it was just a lot of grinding, brother. Just a lot of grinding.
Like what do you mean? Just like a lot of no's and when you were reaching out to people, was your initial reach out was to agencies or like trying to find other, people in the kind of the similar area that maybe doesn't offer marketing or offers it, but does a bad job of it?
It's a little bit of both. I mean, we wanted to test market because we didn't really necessarily know if it was going to take off. So we would reach out to agencies. In one campaign, I built a campaign on LinkedIn, and another campaign I would build towards actual business owners. And we would just kind of direct and go back and forth. And one, I had to learn what it was like to pitch a direct client for marketing services. So I didn't see it I seen it as a learning opportunity. And then the other was I wanted to talk to agency owners just to understand like some of their common problems so I could create more solutions and we could grow this thing. So it was never to me, everything that we do as a business owner is only to learn. We're getting paid to learn, essentially. So when I was building those things out, and actually the grinding was getting on the 30-minute calls, like, 8 times a day while working full time and being a dad and a husband and still trying to stay sane. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But a lot of it was just, having conversations. Whenever there was a problem, identify if we had a solution, and then have Zach actually come in and help me execute and us actually deliver on that. And every role in this company that has been built, we have a team of about 26 people now. Zach and I have been a part of each one of those roles in some capacity and fired ourselves from.
Yeah.
So,
right. Which is the ultimate goal, right? Yeah. Yes. It's like, all right, I'm going to do all these things. And we just talked about this on another episode, the E-Myth Revisited, right? And it's the whole idea of like, you're the operator, you're the marketer, you're the janitor, you do all these things. And then as you grow, and I think Traction too, and the whole entrepreneur operating system, that's all about kind of being in all these roles and then slowly firing yourself from them until you can kind of actually be the CEO of the company.
Which is really hard to do, right? And
yeah,
I'd also even argue that even when you are you've made it, you're the CEO of the company, you did it. Oftentimes you find yourself falling right back down to something else, just a temporary, and you're like, all right, I get over here now. Let me go back to CEO real quick. So it's still always there, And you had asked me prior to us, getting on here about, we were talking about vacations and stuff, and I'm about to go on a 2-week vacation, and I actually heard this yesterday. You don't know what's really broken in your business until you take a break as a business owner. So if you take the step out as a business owner and you have a team of people doing the work, you're going to find out real quick what you need to fix,
Right.
And I've always tried to implement like a 2 to 3 week break, maybe even longer sometimes, every year. And also, like I had mentioned prior, I'm a big outdoor enthusiast. So I like to take my kids backpacking in the mountains, and I don't like to be on the phone in those moments. I want to be with my kids. I want to be with God.
Right. Yeah. Being present. Well, this last trip. So, I was just saying too, we just went on a 4-day vacation, went up to the lake here in Colorado. And I did this thing on your iPhone. You can create like a special profile for notifications, like to say like do not disturb.
Yes. And
so it's like, all right, only if someone calls me back to back, and only if it's these people, my mother-in-law, like a family. It's like, okay, if these people call, let a call come through. But I turned that on for the whole trip, and I didn't look at my phone. I intentionally didn't go through emails. And so it's like, because it's one of those things where as much intentionality as you have to be present, as soon as you get that email or thing about, oh, this client's upset about this, then your brain turns on and it starts thinking, and you can't like, and you're just distracted, and you're like trying to help your kids with something, and you're thinking about the response in your head of the email that you're going to write. And so, yeah, I think that's definitely one of those things that if you can build something to where you can leave it for several weeks and everything runs without you, like you've got a good business,
That's amen, brother. Well, and it's funny. I mean, like to a point to that, it's like, also it empowers your team. Like it gives them the opportunity to show up, like when we first started doing this, Zach and I both do it, by the way. It's not just me. Zach, he had his baby last year, and, when she was born, he wanted to be present with his family. He didn't want to have to be stuck in the business and things like that. So, he was out for probably about 2 or 3 months, and it did its thing. And when it came back, it grew and it sustained and it did everything a business is supposed to do. But to your point, it's like you have to do that. You have to build it that way intentionally. And we knew when we first started Advertis, because we had full control of building the company ourselves, and we had been a part of so many other startups and different companies at different levels, we knew that if we were going to build it, we needed to build each stage intentionally to serve not just our partners and their clients, but also our team, especially our team, and especially us as business owners. At the end of the day, family, we want to spend time with our families. We want to spend time, in worship with God. We want to be able to, invest in our communities. And sometimes as a business owner, we don't always get that. It feels like we're very overwhelmed. We're wearing a lot of hats. So that's part of why we started Advertis, is because we wanted to be able to help other business owners find time for themselves again, and not have to feel that stress of how am I going to make this happen for this client, and how am I going to do this for this one, and how am I going to grow my agency, and how am I going to, hire, and all these things. And our goal was to help give those owners back time so they can actually be owners.
So is that the vision that you led with? I mean, when you guys started at Advertis, what was it as far as the autonomy and freedom? Was it you guys had a skill set and you were like, hey, let's use this skill set to make money? Or did you come into it with like a vision and a mission?
So the money was already there, right? Like by that point, I had already been successful in most things that I had done and already made a decent living off of my investments and the angel investing and things like that. So to me, it was like, how can we give back to these other business owners? And, when Zach brought the white label thing to me, what was really appealing about it was that we got to serve more than one business at a time with the same service. So we always say, like, we're serving 2 businesses with 1 service. So what I mean by that is when we partner with the agency, their clients are getting our team, which we're paying, we've invested, countless hours of training and countless, dollars into training them and these things like that, all that effort, energy, that rapport, the culture that client's getting. They don't know all the things that's been invested into that. We pay $120,000 a month for this team, payroll and all that stuff. And that agency, they don't pay that. They don't have to. They have us. They don't have to worry about that. And so like when Zach had presented white label to me, it was like a really cool perspective, because not only were we helping the agency's client be successful, but we were also helping that agency be successful. So it's like helping 2 business owners essentially.
Yeah. Well, and too, I'm sure it scratches that itch of like constantly meeting new businesses and meeting new business owners. Like there's this constant like introduction of new business ideas and new things that you're doing. So I'm sure that is also like awesome in itself as well.
That you make a good point. I mean, being a serial, like the entrepreneur that I am, like I'm always looking for the next things. Like I catch on things pretty quickly now because we're so involved in so many different industries. So like one day I'll be talking to a waterproofing company, and like for whatever reason, they need help with something to do with their business, and our agency partner will bring me in just to talk with them. And the next day I'm talking to a Fortune 500, SaaS company that's like wanting to expand in a reseller market. And I'm like, yeah, this is what you're going to do. And it's like, there's so many different vast varieties of industries we work in. But to your point, like I'm a data guy. Like I get to see trends before most people would even dream of them, And so it's kind of neat to see like all the perspectives of how different businesses work. And it actually fed my entrepreneurial spirit whenever we got into this, because we work with so many different types of businesses. Pretty cool.
Yeah, that's really cool. I want to go back to one of the things you said earlier, and you brought up Steve Jobs, and you said that was one of the biggest things that small business owners like struggle with, and that's focus. What do you mean by that exactly? In the sense of they're always looking for the new shiny thing, or they're not like honing in and drilling down in one particular part of the business, or like, what do you mean by that?
Good question. I'm glad you came back to that. So, So I think one of the reasons why Steve Jobs was so successful, if you studied his career and his path with Apple, he would treat every decision as if it was like the only decision that had to be made. It's just like a hard focus on the one problem in that moment. And I've found that in most businesses that I've been a part of, a lot of times the founders, specifically founders, and I would say that too, that's probably pretty important to take. The founders typically, if they're not focused on like just one or maybe even just up to 3 problems max, they're usually so scattered. They're not focused. They're not being efficient. They're not actually doing anything essentially.
Right.
And what I found
you get caught in the cycle of busy work.
Yes, that's a great way to put it. And so what I've always had to like do is try to pull them out of that and be like, hey, listen, like, let's take a step back. Like, what is the actual problem here? Like, because it probably isn't going to be all these things. It's going to be one thing probably. And so it's like identifying that. And so, even myself, I find myself falling in those loops, and that's why I have to go to the mountains for 2 days by myself and work through that, and take the step out of the business. And think about it. And like we were kind of going full circle here, but going back to taking the vacation once a year. Yes. If you're a business owner and you built a team and you've never left to go on vacation, I highly encourage you to take the break and see where things are going to fall apart. Because now it gives you focus.
Yeah, it's like, okay, I can't leave. So what do I need to build in order for me to be able to leave? Step 1.
Well, I'll tell you a story. So when we probably in our first year, we were growing pretty quickly, and we did what every agency should not do, and we used Slack as our project management tool. Don't ever do
gosh. I would say this right now because I've tried to use Slack and I don't understand. And I'm sure that there's a system or a process that people, because it's the industry standard, but it becomes so convoluted and so confusing, and the sub threads and all these. I'm like, I can't even find anything. Like, how do people have actual meaningful work inside this platform?
I'll tell you the truth. We used to mock companies who had a handbook, like an actual handbook for their company when they hired people, and we have a handbook in our company now. Like, that's how that is. But
no school like the old school.
It's like, what kind of company are we? We have a handbook now. But all to say, like, to your point, yeah, dude, like having these SOPs and like policies on how to actually like respond into a Slack message, or how to handle threads and Slacks and things like that. So anyways, I took like a 2-week vacation that year. Zach also took a vacation, and our team's doing its thing. We had freshly built this team. It's a new team, but the leadership team that was running it, they had been around since the garage days. We call it the garage days. And we didn't do it out of a garage. I wish that we were that cool. But essentially, we took the break. We came back to a nightmare, brother. It was a nightmare. We're like, things are falling off here and there and this and that. We had to get really deep in the weeds to fix it. But we found that Slack was not good for us at that moment. It was good leading up to it. It was good enough. But we found that if we wanted to get past this point, we wanted to be able to take the breaks, and we wanted to be able to, be able to manage our team from a distance. We needed to have correct systems and, different reporting and things like that in place for us to hold our team accountable, for us to be able to make sure things don't drop through the cracks. And so we took literally the next 2 months, and that's all we focused on was implementing ClickUp and making sure training our team how to use it, how we wanted them to, structuring it, doing it intentionally. And now, the system is built. I literally, if I have any questions on what's going on, I can go to a dashboard. It's all there for me. Same thing with our HubSpot, same thing with our accounting. That's same thing with I spend on average anywhere from 5 to 20 hours a week in the business. 20 hours meaning that I actually am investing into something. Like right now we're getting further into government contracts. So I'm spending more time in, but it's intentional, and that gives me the freedom to, again, be the business owner, but also get to spend time with my family and, obviously with the community and things like that. So.
Yeah, that's awesome. I think that, and that totally makes sense. What do you think the area that you guys first started when you started hiring and bringing in people? What are the first areas of the business that you kind of looked at that you wanted to kind of remove from your plate or work yourself out of?
As a business owner, you find the things that you don't like the most to try to get out of those things first as much as you can. But honestly, I can actually speak confidently and say, I've actually enjoyed every role in the company, to be honest. I never thought that I would say that, being all these years later, but in the moments you're like, dang, this is a really difficult version of me that I have to be right now. But I think, we hard focused heavily on operations, mostly because we knew that if we were in the day-to-day, doing the actual grunt work of everything, it was going to prevent us from actually growing the business. So we found relatively quickly that if we were to hire, which again, if you're a business owner or an entrepreneur, really what you're saying is you're someone who provides opportunity. That's actually what God's blessed you with. God has blessed you to provide opportunity, to create and to build. So we found that operations was our first touch point. We wanted to have a project manager. We wanted to have a process, that kind of stuff. Sales was always easy for me because I've always been decent at sales. So selling is like the bottom of the pyramid of business. The Maslow's hierarchy of business needs. You've seen that?
Yeah.
So sales was always never an issue because there's so much demand for what we had to offer after we figured that out. So then it was, how do we do this at scale? How do we grow this thing? So we focused heavily on ops in the beginning. And even to this day, our sales team compared to our operations team is, we have 15 people plus on our ops side, and we have maybe 4 to 6 people on our sales side, and everyone else is in admin. So
yeah,
ops heavy.
What do you think, as far as, it sounds to me like you guys kind of had this idea, and so you launched it, and very quickly you found out that it was a good idea, right? Within 4 months, if you're generating a decent amount of income and you're like, oh wow, this is working. So obviously you found a product to market fit. What have you seen, especially as being an angel investor, and at what point do you pull the plug on something, or because sometimes I feel like as entrepreneurs or small business owners, you're kind of grinding at this thing, and it's maybe just paying the bills, it's just getting, you buy. At what point do you move from thriving or surviving to thriving, and at what point do you pull the plug on saying, you know what, I am just surviving, I'm never thriving?
Good question. I think it's different for everyone, right? I think, from my experience, I always would give everything at least a minimum of a year of just hard going all at it. And if you don't feel like you're giving it all, which you will know, because you're gonna be, that's what's the thing that's gonna keep you up at night, is if you're not feeling like you're giving it your all, you're gonna know. But giving it your all for a full year, when we start, a good question, a good thing to bring up is when we first started Advertis, we didn't go in full time. We were still working full time at our other company. and I still had angel investment stuff I had to take care of. That was my responsibility. I had to be faithful with. So there was a season of just building the basics with Advertis before going in full time. And I don't count that for me personally because I wasn't giving it my all. And I think as you know, to ask that question to yourself, you know, my advice would be, are you giving it your all? And if you are, I would say no, I wouldn't do a minimum. I would always have a minimum of a year.
Yeah.
But it's different for everyone, right?
Yeah, that makes sense. I think it totally makes sense. And I definitely agree to give it your all, do that self-analysis, because I think, only you'll know. And I like the idea of like giving it a year. Like that makes sense to me as well, because I feel like I know so many people who they're constantly moving from one thing to the next. Like and it's like, I don't think you're getting any traction on anything because you're not like actually focused and devoting your time and energy to that thing. Or, you know, as soon as it gets a little bit difficult, you just bounce and you move on to the next thing. And it's like, well, of course you're not going to have any traction or growth because you're constantly moving from one thing to the next.
Precisely. Oh, you know what's a really good point? I heard this recently. I think it was Alex Hermosi actually had said it, but don't quote me on this, but someone said when things start getting hard, you're starting to get traction. You're starting to identify what needs to be fixed. So to your point, like when you're hard focusing, oftentimes it means you need to do the one thing and that's it, and do it over and over again. Before we found traction in Advertis, I probably talked to 120 different business owners before we actually started closing. You know how many hours of phone calls that was? And it's just like, but an entrepreneur and a business owner, you're so different than the rest of, you know, you're a different type of breed, I think, in the sense that you're willing to put that work in. Like no one's going to work that hard in your business but you. So if you go in and willing to take on 120 phone calls in a month, like, and go find them and prospect them and get them over to discovery, like if you're willing to put that work in, like you're already going to win no matter what, no matter what you do, you know?
Well, yeah, I think that the putting the work in and then outlasting, I think that's one of my strong suits is just, you know,
Perseverance.
Just like, you know what, no matter how difficult or hard this gets, I'm just going to keep showing up and then it starts working out, you know?
Amen, brother. Hey, that's exactly, and that's, to be honest, that's how I've led most of my career, is just sticking to it. And even if it's terrible right now, it most likely will get better and better and better the more you do it. So I feel that.
So you keep bringing some faith and spirituality into this conversation, which I really enjoy and I like. And whenever I find somebody who is like-minded in that, I always love to ask them the question of how do you balance your faith and your business? Because I feel like in the secular entrepreneur world, it's all about, you know, crushing and grinding and creating the perfect email sequence and funnel in order, and writing the perfect copy that manipulates the person into taking action, you know, like, and then on the spiritual side of things, you have this, you know, that, you know, God owns 1,000 cattle on 1,000 hills, and that he cares for the birds of the air and the lilies of the fields, and don't worry about tomorrow because tomorrow will worry about itself, and, you know, be at peace and rest. And sometimes I feel like those two things like fight each other.
They do. I mean, let's be honest, they do. I mean, we're all sinners at heart, right? I mean, at the end of the day. But, you know, my faith is, and I actually came to Christ in this journey of becoming an entrepreneur. I actually was raised in an atheist household.
Oh, wow.
So it's really interesting, my story there. But I fell in love with Jesus through this journey. And funny enough, to your point you make about both sides of that, it's like, yeah, that is the struggle. That is the struggle. But it feels so much more intentional and more directed when you have Christ in your life going through that, you know? Because I can tell you this, I've known quite a few business owners who have come to Christ through their journey of becoming an entrepreneur or a business owner. And a lot of times because you do feel alone and you need Christ in your life. Like you find him. And that's what's happened to me, to be honest. But you know, every single day I'm still, you know, I'm on a call with Zach if something's going on. I'm like, man, like I need to pray about this. Like I'm feeling a lack of patience, or like giving it to God essentially is really, it's what brought me closer to him essentially. So
Yeah.
Having the spiritual balance, and I'm hoping I'm answering your question. But having the spiritual balance is actually the most beautiful part about this business from in my perspective, because it has helped me come to God with different challenges, or looking deeper into myself. Like, God, am I being greedy here? Like, what's going on here? Like, if I'm feeling some sort of discernment or anything, like maybe one of our employees does something that I disagree with, and I'm like, how do I approach this, God? Like, what do I need to do? And it just, that couch back there you're seeing, I lay on that couch often and have conversations with God, you know?
Yeah.
And the truth is, it's a perspective change. When I first got into business and stuff, it was because I wanted to provide for my family, which I found out that's a foundational motivation for any Christian, right? So we want to be faithful with what God has blessed us with. So I found that I was already living by a lot of the Christian standards, and I didn't understand what that was until I started exploring it and really learning who God was. And then I realized, like, in my heart, that's who I've been trying to serve the whole time. I just didn't know it, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So now, you know, being a Christian, and I talk about it publicly, you know, I want to live for him, and I want to have servant leadership, and I want him to use me to bring others to him. So I see it as a blessing, you know?
So then the other question I have, especially you have such a large team, or, you know, a small team, but it's large, and, you know, I only have 3 people on my team. So there's a difference. But with that being said, how have you, like, is your partner a Christian as well?
Yes, he is. He is actually part of me becoming a Christian as well.
Nice. That's awesome. And so then I guess the other question is that, you know, how have you balanced that as a growing, you know, company? How have you managed to, you know, keep the culture a certain way? I'm assuming, I guess, you just kind of weeding out people, especially because it sounds to me like you're pretty bold with your, like, faith and how you're talking about things. Just, you know, on this podcast, you're just kind of like dropping oh God, this, and, like, you know, whatever. And so in my mind, I'm assuming you're probably similar to that, like, within the company as a whole. And so it's going to be a red flag for somebody who doesn't want anything to do with religion to be like, oh, this guy's, you know, a Jesus nut. Like,
sure.
Maybe I don't want to work here.
No, that's a good point. I mean, honestly, if you look at any of our job postings, we throw our core values right at the center of the post. And we start the post by saying, any job post we put on LinkedIn, it says our core values and why we built Advertis first before we talk about the role. And it's very clear that we are a Christian-based company. It is in the direct core values of the company. So it, like, literally says we believe in servant leadership as Jesus led. And that's one of our core values. Yeah. So to answer your question more directly, we just put God right in the center and over all of our business. So that's really how we have, you know, I've had moments where we've interviewed people, especially in the beginning, where they were trying to understand who we were, what we were doing. And we tell them that honestly. And some people loved it, and they just never heard of that, and they just was really excited to be a part of that. Or some people were just like, you know, I don't believe in that, and they were upfront. But I'm going to tell you the truth. It didn't stop us from wanting to work with them. Like, none of that stopped us from wanting to work with them. And the reason why is because, like, we want to love everyone the same. That's what we're called to do. So if anything, it gives us an opportunity to lead and show them what being around other Christians can be like, you know?
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, no, that's what I always tell my team. I'm like, we're not a Christian company, but we're Christians in a company. And, you know, we're called to love people, and leave them better than we find them, you know? And so it's like always trying to find ways that we can be a positive influence in a client's life, you know, because at the end of the day, they're struggling and they're hurting and they're alone and they're stressed and all those other kind of things. So if we can provide that peace to them or comfort, and then they're going to be like, man, what's different about those guys? You know, like, why is it so encouraging? Why is the energy so good over at their office, you know? And it's like, oh, awesome. Okay. And then I can have a reason for that hope, you know, when someone asks, you know. So
Mark, knowing you for the last year, your energy is always awesome. So I can tell.
Well,
you
thanks,
have great
Ozzy.
energy.
Man, well, this has been just an awesome conversation. I feel like there's like so many other things I want to talk to you about, and maybe we can have you come back on and we can have a whole nother conversation, and dive deeper into a bunch of other stuff. And so, if someone was listening to this and they wanted to reach out to you or connect with you, what would be the best way for them to connect?
They can connect with me on LinkedIn. Pretty easy to find. Ozzy, spelled just like Ozzy Osbourne. Not very many of those out there.
Again, where did that name come from?
Ozzy Osbourne.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yes.
Oh, yeah, atheist family. So your mom's like, yeah, Ozzy, biting the heads off bats and stuff. Look, you're redeeming the name, dude.
Yes, literally, I was named after Ozzy Osbourne. My parents are big rockers. But yeah, no, you can find me on LinkedIn. If you want to check out our website at advertis.com, it's ADVIRTIS. It's a made up word. Ask me about it when we talk. Yeah. And also, if you want to email me, feel free to. It's Ozzy, OZZY, at advertis.com. So.
Awesome. And then I always love to leave people with one idea or one tip that can help them starting Monday morning. So saying like, all right, if you can focus on this one thing or start working on this one thing, what would be that item that you would tell someone, say, Monday morning, start doing this?
Monday morning, plan your next vacation. So when you take the break, you can find the problems that you need to work on.
Love it. Love it. Take the vacation and find out where the holes are. All right. Well, hey, thanks so much for listening to The Friday Habit. If you go to thefridayhabit.com, you can find show notes for this episode. There you can also find links to our websites and ways to get in touch. And at the bottom of the page, you can download our guide to the Friday Habit system that'll show you how to set aside one full day each week dedicated to working on your business instead of always in your business. You can hit us up at hello@thefridayhabit.com. And until next time, live every day like it's Friday.